The halving joint is a simple flat frame joint where half the thickness of the wood is removed from each piece. The joint can be used for various frame types, including picture frames, structural frames, bed frames and door frames. The joint has a decent amount of strength and is simple to make with hand tools. There are many variations of this joint, including the cross halving, T halving, corner halving and dovetail halving. A cross halving can also be created on the edge of the wood and used to create carcass framing. However, this video will concentrate on the flat frame types and will show you how to make a T halving joint, as the same techniques used to make this can be used to create the other types of flat frame halvings. For reference, the face of the joint is known as the cheek and the edge of the joint the shoulder. Place part 2 on top of part 1 and line the top edges up, ensuring they are flush. Now, take your pencil and draw a line along the bottom edge of part 2. Take part number 1 and place it in the vise. Now, using the tri-square and pencil, project your line around the two edges of the wood. Set your marking gauge to half the thickness of the wood if you don't know how to do this. Check out my marking gauge video on the channel. A good tip to check it is exactly halfway, is to put a small mark from one edge of the wood and then repeat from the other edge. The spur should be in exactly the same place from both edges. If it is not, move the spur in the middle of the two marks and repeat the process until the spur is the same distance from both sides. Now, using the marking gauge, mark a line at half the thickness from the pencil line to the top edge. Then along the end grain. And finally from the top edge down to the pencil line. Now go over the marking gauge lines with your pencil and mark one half as waste wood with diagonal lines. You have now completed marking out part 1. On part 2, use your steel rule to measure where you need the first edge of part 1 to be placed and mark with your pencil. Using your tri-square, draw a line at your pencil mark. Now, position the edge of part 1 on the line you have just drawn and mark a line at the opposite edge. Put part 2 in the vise and project your lines around the edges of the wood using the tri-square. Now, take your marking gauge and using the same technique as before, check it is exactly in the middle of the wood by making a small mark from each edge, ensuring it is in the same place and altering if not. Mark a line with your marking gauge in between your pencil line, then go over the line with your pencil. Turn the wood around in the vise and repeat the last process. Now, mark your waste wood with diagonal lines and you have completed marking out part 2. Place part 1 in the vise with the corner facing directly up. Now, ensuring your saw is placed on the waste side of the line, draw back 3 times to create a groove and start to saw the waste. There are 2 main reasons we start sawing from the corner. The first is that it is easier to establish a groove than sawing on the end grain. The second is that it is easier to see where you're sawing, as you only need to reference 2 pencil lines on 2 edges, rather than referencing 3 lines on 3 edges if sawing from the end grain. Keep checking the pencil marks on the 2 edges when sawing to ensure you are within your waste wood, and stop when you reach the shoulder pencil line. Then turn the wood around and repeat this process from the opposite corner. Now, place the wood in the vise with the end grain facing directly up. Place your saw in the existing saw lines and saw down to the shoulder pencil line. Check your sawing on both sides of the line regularly to ensure your sawing is level. This stage will saw the peak that has been left in the middle of the cheek. Clamp your wood to the bench using a G-clamp and scrap piece of wood with a straight edge. Ensure the straight edge is clamped adjacent to your pencil line on the waste wood side. Remember, you are aiming to saw the joint slightly too small so you can pare back the shoulder of the joint in the following stages to create a perfect fit. Now resting your tenon saw on the straight edge, draw back 3 times to create a groove and saw down to the pencil line, ensuring you check the line on both edges to ensure you are sawing level. Slow your sawing down when you are nearing the pencil line, as sawing too far down will severely weaken the joint strength. This is why it is better to always saw down on the shoulder after sawing down the cheek, as you will be less likely to saw too far down. If your waste wood does not come off, check that you have sawed down the cheek far enough and put the wood back in the vise and saw down the cheek further if required. Place your clamping block with a straight edge on your pencil line and secure to the bench with a G-clamp. Rest the flat side of your bevel edge chisel against the straight edge and pare vertically along the length of the shoulder. You can use hand pressure or tap the chisel gently with a mallet. Paring this way will ensure your shoulders are vertical, as sawing by hand will never produce a truly straight edge. Once you have pared back the shoulder to the pencil line, take part 2 and test fit by checking if it is flush at the edge. If it is not flush at the edge, move the clamping block back 1mm and repeat the process, test fitting after every pass. If unsure how to use wood chisels, check out an in-depth guide to using chisels on the video on the link above. Stop when the edges are flush. Now you will need to finish the cheek of the joint by paring. The easiest way to do this is to use a paring block the same thickness as half the thickness of the wood, in this case 10mm. Clamp the block at the edge of the bench in front of the side edge of the cheek. Now, ensuring your chisel is flat side down and flat on the paring block, use a short stabbing motion to pare the wood down to half the thickness. Do this to just over halfway, as going over the edge of the cheek can cause tear out. You can use your finger to press down on the chisel to ensure it stays flat on the paring block, as any lifting of the chisel will result in paring in a downward motion and removing more waste wood than required. Now turn your wood around and repeat the process from the other side. Clean up any waste wood left on the shoulder by paring along them. If you have a hand router, you can use this to pare. Secure the wood in the vise or to the bench and set the router to the required depth as per the tool's instructions. Ensure you are pressing the router down on the wood face. Pare to just over halfway. Turn the wood around and repeat from the other side. You have now completed part 1. Clamp your clamping block with a straight edge adjacent to your pencil line inside the waste wood area. Now take your tenon saw and, ensuring it is against the straight edge, draw back 3 times to create a groove and then saw down half the thickness of the wood. Check your line on both edges of the wood to ensure you are sawing level. Repeat this process on the opposite pencil line. And also in the middle of the joint to break the waste wood into smaller sections for easier removal in the next stage. Secure your work in the vise or to the bench. You now need to chop the waste wood. Do this by using your chisel bevel edge down and tapping it with a mallet. Only remove 1 to 2mm at a time and only chop 1/2 of the waste wood to start with. Chop to just over halfway, as chopping over the edge may result in tear out, and stop 1 to 2mm above your pencil line. Once the first half is complete, Move on to the second half. For more information on the chopping technique, check out the How to Use Woodwork Chisels video on the channel. The link is in the description. Now turn the wood around and repeat this process from the other side. Now repeat the process for part 1 in step 3, which involves clamping a straight edge on your pencil line and paring vertically to clean up the shoulders and take the joint to the correct width. Repeat the process on the opposite shoulder. Then, test fit the joint. If your joint is not fitting, do not force it in, as this may ruin the wood. Simply repeat the process of paring the shoulders vertically until the joint has a tight fit. Now repeat the process for part 1 in step 4, which involves clamping a paring block in front of the joint and paring the waste wood down until the pencil line. Remember to use your chisel flat side down and ensure it is flat on the block. Only pare to just over halfway, then turn it round and pare from the other side. At this stage you can also use a hand router again to pare. Now test fit your joint, ensuring it is flush on the face. If it is not flush, make small adjustments as necessary by lightly paring the cheek of the required part. If you wanted to create a corner lap joint, you would make 2 part 1s. If you wanted to create a cross halving joint, you would make 2 part 2s. You have now completed the T halving joint.